how are you?
Yeah, good. Excited to talk about our movie of the month this month.
Yes, it's a big one. Officially the highest grossing film of 2022, actually.
Is it really?
It is.
Already?
Already.
Interesting.
Yes.
That's exciting. I'm glad as well because, as I'm sure we'll talk about, there is a lot of thoughts around this film, but we should introduce the film.
Probably.
Yes, so why don't you go ahead?
In case you haven't figured it out yet, Dr. Strange in the Multiverse of Madness.
The latest in the Marvel oeuvre, and of course the first, I'd say first film to just immediately set out by saying that it's going to kind of like talk about the multiverse and be centered around the multiverse after its kind of introduction in movie form through Spider-Man No Way Home.
Which is especially interesting considering how I think the film turned out, which I'm sure we'll get into.
Yes.
So,
without further ado, should we?
let's do it.
So, of course, as with every review, we always begin with our one word. One word, nothing else.
My one-word review would be reflections.
Ooh, that could know like some multiple layers.
Yes, there's
like
like
a mirror.
a literal layers, some thematic layers.
Yep.
You know, I think the film will sound a bit more artistic than it actually is, but
I mean, we'll get into
we'll
that.
see.
Yeah.
Yes. So what about yours?
Mine is symphony.
That might be the best one-word review you could have applied to this film. And I think people who've seen the movie, whether you love it or hate it, will know why.
And also works on multiple layers.
Yes.
So they'll go.
The interesting thing is that, I think I've even said this to us before, is that for the comic book nerd versus the actual not comic book nerd, you get way more excited about these movies than I do at this point. There was a time when I was like frothing at the mouth to see them, but now I'm almost just like tired whenever the next movie comes. Like I'm excited, but when I'm in the cinema, I'm like, okay, here we go. And of course, I felt that more with this one than any of the others, because as we're seeing where the MCU's going, it's all about the multiverse, you know, with the Lokis and the Spider-Man No Way Homes, and now we're getting into the Multiverse of Madness. And I was sitting here being like, all right, so we're preparing for a 2-hour film that's going to be, you know, a whole trailer for like the next 10 years worth of movies. And I was so pleasantly surprised and very pleased that it's actually not that.
Yeah.
You know, it was still very much a Dr. Strange-centered adventure with multiverse elements, because he, as a character, does get involved in multiverse surrealism and, you know, all that kind of stuff. It's just part of his entire remit. So the fact that they treated it more like a traditional Doctor Strange story as opposed to a giant press kit for the next 10 years of the MCU. And you could argue about the middle stretch, which we'll get into, but it still never felt that way to me. I was like, I'm caring about what's happening with Doctor Strange, with Wong, with Scarlet Witch, and I just found myself very wrapped up in this forward-moving, fast-paced adventure that was also tons of fun. But I don't think I've had this much fun in a Marvel film, especially when all of that enjoyment was applied to how it was directed and how it was packaged, and, you know, just
Very stylistic.
very stylistically to Sam Raimi's kind of auteurism. So that's kind of a general overview. I'm sure there are things I don't think this film's perfect. I don't even think it's as good as the first Doctor Strange movie, but it's definitely one of the most director-led MCU films we've gotten in a while, and that was part of what made it so enjoyable for me, even though I'm watching it knowing that some people aren't really going to be into Raimi's style, because he's very specific. He you know, pairs, you know, a bit of campiness with corniness and some genuine emotion, some horror and some dark comedy.
Yeah, I think I would second everything, and so I'm joking.
Come up with your own ideas, Alice.
Second everything, so let's move on. No, I think that is 100% like how I feel. I'm so on board with you saying it was your most fun experience of Marvel, because, or not Marvel, I guess, but recent Marvel.
Recent memory.
Yeah, recent Marvel. Not to say that, like, for example, one of my favorite, if not my favorite MCU film is No Way Home. So that's not me saying that it's better, but...
It's not better, no.
It's not, but I had so much fun. It was so enjoyable. And when we went to see it the second time, it went so much faster in the viewing experience than it was the first time. So I think the first time you're just like, what's going on? Oh my gosh. And I know, you know, similar to what you said, there was a lot of expectations there around, you know, oh my gosh, they've done reshoots, there's going to be 70 characters, you know, a lot of kind of misinformation on purpose, but it was also kind of like, ooh, what's going to happen? Multiverse of Madness. The title obviously is quite indicative. And the story at its center, yes, it is crazy. Yes, it is colorful. Yes, it has a lot of exciting elements in it and the cameos. However, it is still a relatively simple story at its center.
Very easy to follow. Yeah.
But yes, but in a good way. Not as simple like in a previous film where it was like, that's so simple, it's stupid. There's so much craziness being presented to us in the color and in the stylization and in kind of what we're doing with the characters as well, that you have to have a simple story at its center in order for audiences to accept it, which, as we know, audiences haven't necessarily accepted this as openly because, ironically enough, all people have been asking for is not the same Marvel film over and over and over again. And yet, when they're finally delivered something that is so uniquely Raimi, so uniquely Sam Raimi...
It's like Evil Dead, Army of Darkness, Dragon to Hell.
100%, and we'll get into that. But like, they're finally literally given a Sam Raimi, like fully stylistic director-led movie, and there's still hate on it. I do also want to touch on the performances before we get into specifics. Just because I think if the Oscars weren't like superhero racist,
or genre film racist,
they should just give an Oscar to Elizabeth Olsen, or at least, I mean, we don't know what else is yet to come this year, but at least a nomination, because she is impeccable.
She's not going to get a nomination, but the work that she puts into this film is the same level of effort that, you know, you'd have a nomination worthy performance.
I wouldn't even just say the work though. I think the performance, the end result is like, I was captivated by her at every step of the way. You know, she's playing someone who is literally driven into madness, yes, slightly by a magical MacGuffin as a corruption, but also because of her heartbreak and her grief, which we've obviously explored at length in WandaVision. And this is the continuation of that story. And so seeing her just have this like break from reality in a way that, yes, again, is altered due to magic, but is also very real. However, I think there is something to be said for Benedict Cumberbatch's performance, because he's doing something really interesting. Obviously, yes, he's playing multiple, 4 versions of himself,
4 or 5,
including a dead, like possessed version, which is like very Evil Dead, very Sam Raimi. And I think he does so well, whether he's like regular Strange or, you know, the Defender Strange at the beginning, or the Zombie Strange, or even the Crazed Strange. Who, you know...
The Dark Strange, you mean?
Dark, like, Strange in the collapsed universe. Because he is so, like... Immediately, I was like, oh, this is like 2 different actors. Finally, I do just want to, before we get into it, I do want to touch on Xochitl Gomez playing America Chavez. I think she's a delightful addition to the MCU.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see where, you know, her story goes moving forward. You know, mainly because I thought she was, you know... she held her own against Benedict Wong and Elizabeth Olsen and Benedict Cumberbatch.
And she didn't feel like she'd been shoved into the story. You know what I mean?
She was the literal MacGuffin, you know.
She was the biggest of the MacGuffins.
Yes, because there are multiple MacGuffins, and to be honest, that is a genuine flaw in the film's structure.
Absolutely, especially when it was such a MacGuffin that it's like the ultimate version of one where it's like it literally doesn't end up happening. Nothing ends up happening.
I might just say it so people know what we're talking about, like, you know, the...
Book of the
the Book of the Vishanti, the Darkhold, and America.
And America's powers,
the Book of the Vishanti is what...
that's the big
MacGuffin. The good guys are like after it for the whole movie.
Yeah, and then
and
it gets
by
burnt.
the time they find it, you have the classic moments like, we've got the thing we need to beat the villain, and then the villain gets there, blows the Book of the Vishanti up, and it's like this, you know, book bursts into flames. And in the cinema, I was even sitting there being like, oh no, but then I thought, oh wait, why did they need that again?
Yeah.
Like, it mattered so little.
It was meant to give them power. Yeah, it was so
but you go back through it on the second viewing, it was literally like, the Book of the Vishanti, it will give you the power to beat the villain. It's almost like the screenwriter Michael Waldron, he just was like, he had a template for like MacGuffin-based movies and just forgot to change that line.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's also because there was so much else going on in the film.
Exactly, that's what I mean. There's so much else going on where it's like, if you were also to deal with all like the specifics and actually get to the MacGuffin, like the thing is, yes, it got burnt up, but the way it got burnt up, I feel like it could be saved. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't ash by the end.
Yeah.
It was still like there were a few pages.
It was just kind of like, you know, they then he burnt that, and then he had to go to another universe to get a secondary version of the evil MacGuffin.
Yeah, well, exactly.
You know? But I think the point is that there's so much going on in the film in terms of the character interactions and also just the scenarios the characters get put in and what that makes them think about.
Yep.
You know, like Strange himself, what he learns about the different versions of himself and how that makes him feel about his own
Which
self.
is, I think, the point of the movie. Ultimately, that point, I think, is to introduce the fact that the other strangers always fail. You know, they're always put to the test regarding their goodness, and it seems that no matter what, they always fail.
But before we forget, we do need to talk about, I think, something that everyone would have noticed and maybe questioned me about when I said that this didn't feel like a trailer for 10 movies, is the Illuminati.
Of course, so first we have Black Bolt, which, like, I saw the Inhumans show.
She's got a lot of time on her hands.
I'm a completionist, and I loved Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I was watching the entire... It's a good show. It's a good show from, like, season 3 onwards. It becomes a great show.
I'm not waiting through 3 seasons of shit.
No, 2 seasons. You only have to wait
I'm
through
not
2.
sitting through 40 episodes of a show before it gets good.
But it is so good.
I've tried like 6 times.
Okay.
I can't do it.
Well,
I can't get past episode 3.
The point is, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. introduces the idea of Inhumans.
Yeah.
So it's Anson Mount, and he's a very beloved character actor. So
bigger now than he was then as well.
Yeah, now he's also in Star Trek Strange New Worlds as Pike. But yeah, he was in it, and everyone I think got excited as well just by Black Bolt, and I know you were very excited by that depiction.
Yes, no, Black Bolt is a kind of a fan favorite among comic book nerds.
Then we have Agent Carter, which is very exciting just because Hayley Atwell, we all know how much you love Hayley Atwell.
I do love Hayley Atwell.
It's his past.
Did you see the Mission Impossible trailer?
No, I haven't seen it yet. I will watch it eventually. Then we skip over a space and we come to Captain Marvel, Maria Rambeau. Not a lot of reaction in my cinema because everyone was like, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And then we come to John Krasinski as Mr. Fantastic. I'm so excited, and they better use him in all future movies. I literally squealed in my cinema. I literally was, I can't believe they actually got John Krasinski to be Reed Richards.
Yes.
Like,
and I think I was very excited as well. Like, I mean, as you know, I've always had this thing about Mr. Fantastic where, you know, he is my favorite member of the Fantastic Four, and they always get him wrong in film. He's always in film this, you know, weird, socially inept, kind of awkward nerd, but he's not in the
smart,
comics.
So he has to be a nerd.
Yeah, like that's as far as the executives get. He's like, smart guy must be nerd.
Yeah.
No, he's a leader, he's confident, he's charismatic,
but arrogant.
He is very intelligent, but yeah, that's one of his character flaws. He's actually kind of arrogant because he never thinks that he would ever make a mistake, and he doesn't deal with failure very well. You know, and of course, I think there was even little elements of that character in this film.
Exactly.
You get him for 2 scenes,
Literally.
and I did think, like, yeah, that felt like Mr. Fantastic to me.
Yeah.
So I know a lot of people are saying that, for the smartest man in the universe, he
really
seems
dumb.
really dumb.
But it makes sense because, and we'll get to, there's a moment where they obviously all get defeated, but really quick before we get to that moment, there's one more member of the Illuminati, which I know you were also very happy with how he was portrayed in his 2 scenes.
Yes.
Professor X.
Professor X.
Patrick Stewart's
Yellow
Professor
Chair, X-Men cartoon.
Mental powers, you know, like the full,
the
you know.
wobbling of the brain.
Yeah, exactly.
But more importantly.
And the kindness.
Yes, that's more important, which is, you know, when you look at, like, you know, James McAvoy in the X-Men Apocalypse, you know, when he goes inside Apocalypse's brain, first thing he's like, oh, this is my house, bitch, and like goes to fight him. But that's not Professor X to me. Professor X, if he's going into the brain or into the mind palace, he's looking at who he can save, not who he's going to punch. So that scene was spot on for me, and I don't think I could handle another Professor X death.
Yeah, well, I wonder if they're going to bring that character back into the MCU. Maybe, but
played by someone else probably.
But the real excitement about having the Illuminati is that it's genius. I really think it's genius because what it does, Because, I mean, again, we've already done spoiler alert, but again, spoiler alert, they all get fucked up. They all get
badly killed.
And very awfully killed.
And I know a lot
Except
of people...
Except for Captain Marvel. I was just...
Yeah, I think elegant, that one.
Well, not even elegant. I was just kind of like, would that kill her? Like, maybe there's extra powers going on. But they all get fucked up. They're dead. They're gone. Poof.
They're very
the Avengers, the mightiest of this universe that defeated Thanos on a much smaller scale of team requirement. Like, they defeated him on Titan. Guys. Yeah, they defeated him on Titan. They didn't even get to the, clicking or anything like that. Got fucked up by Wanda. And that is to show so excellently how OP she is.
Yeah, I think that's why a lot of people are actually kind of annoyed at this section of the film, because a lot of people are looking at this being like, if you're going to have all these cameos, why just murder them horribly in the middle? But if you were to remove this plot from the MCU and just put it into its own little film about a multiverse adventure, structurally you would go to a universe where there are people who have multiverse experience, and, you know, it'd be like a Council of Ricks, and they'd be like, you better stop multiversing, and then the Council of Ricks would get horribly murdered to show how, you know, dangerous the threat is. And in fact, I think they did that in Rick and Morty. So it makes total sense that would happen.
Sense. And so then we do eventually end up in another universe, because, you know, Scarlet Witch grabs America, goes back to hers and flings the new Christine and Strange into the dark universe. And that is when we have the symphony fight. And we've already established in the Strange, oeuvre that he's into music. We know he's into music. He's literally
it's not out of nowhere.
No, the first time you see him, in the very first movie, he's in the surgery and he's guessing music.
And it was such a creative action sequence, and that's what we need from these films. Bach
versus Beethoven.
Yeah, that's what we need for this genre to survive.
I mean, yes, it's magic, but it would be the equivalent of punching each other just over and over again if it was just them using their defense versus the bolts of energy. This was interesting, and it was like, bah, 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 you know, it was like, oh, and then also the notes were designed differently. Oh,
I mean,
so good.
I think I was so on board for it. And, you know, it had picked me up from a bit of the structural issues with the multiple MacGuffins and the multiple character arcs and, you know, being scared about the trailers with the cameos, and all of a sudden I was back in it, and now we're in a Doctor Strange adventure, and it was weird and different and strange and just so much fun. And everyone I was with was loving it, and it was at that moment that I could feel the cinema was not. I went with 5 people. We were the only 5 that were enjoying it, you know, which was a real shame, I think, because at that point I was like, you know, this is the perfect mix of Raimi's madness and him just taking really big swings and thinking, you know what, I'm going to go for it, and you're either going to be on board with it if you're not, but if you're on board with it, you're going to see something a little different than you wouldn't get from other Marvel films. And it's a shame that so many people weren't on board.
I wanted to turn to some of the people I even went with who didn't like it. I was like, you bunch of fucking cynics, just enjoy things for the sake of enjoyment. Just be a bit wide-eyed. I think that there's this element of being wide-eyed and magic and fascination, and if I had magical powers, sure, I'd fight with fucking music. It's magic. Of course they would fight like that. And of course that would then result in him possessing the dead body of his other version.
Which again, I was laughing my ass off in a good way. I think people would say, oh, you probably were laughing at it. But I feel like, no, Raimi knows.
Oh, for sure.
He knows that this is meant to not be 100% serious. If you have seen any of the Evil Dead films, Army of Darkness, Drag Me to Hell, you know that it's not to be taken seriously. You know, when you look at this film and you think, okay, it's a mid-tier Marvel film. But when you look at the other mid-tier Marvel films, you know, they're all hovering around, you know, 7 to 8 out of 10. You think okay, well, you know, their batting average is quite high.
And ultimately, this is the second in a trilogy. This is the second in a storyline, and I think it serves its purpose. It develops the characters, it gets them to the next stage, it introduces something new, and it tries something new.
It goes about as far into new stylistic and creative directions as you can within the guidelines of the MCU, which, you know, some people would seem as a knock of oh, wouldn't it be better to just have a director do his own thing? But no, part of the, for lack of a better word, artistry of this entire universe is how it does all still fit together.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's actually a very difficult balancing act, being able to give creators their freedom while also adhering to the style that has made the Marvel brand. 100%. So the fact that Raimi, they've got like probably the most iconic director with a grand legacy that they've ever gotten on one of these movies.
Technically the director of the first MCU movie of all.
Technically. Yeah, you've got him in here and he's delivering more of his eccentricities than he has in decades. And it still works as a Doctor Strange movie because I think he figured, well, the perfect venue for what I like, cinematically speaking, is within Doctor Strange's world.
Yes, and with that, I think that's a perfect spot for us to launch into our ratings. So, quick reminder as to what they are. So we've got Cold Trash, Hot Garbage, Socks at Christmas, Hot Soup, and Shining Treasure. That is our 5-point rating system.
Yes.
So Rob, whereabouts do you land on the rating?
Quite obviously, I think I'm going to go with a Hot Soup.
I would agree. Also Hot Soup for me. So yay, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness.
Officially
a Hot Soup.
Yes.
I had so much fun. I can see myself rewatching this. I will rewatch this. Rewatch the first one. I think the first one's a more traditional and a much more, not traditional, I guess that's not the right word, but yeah, a much more solidly structured film. But I had so much fun with the craziness of this one. I think the stylistic nature of it, the cameos are fun, the way they're used are fun, the like little taste of something more that it gives, and of course, Elizabeth Olsen's performance, I just, you know, alone deserves...
It's a standout, I think.
It's a standout. Like, I'm so excited for a solo movie. I think that it's really going to bring us something interesting. So, but I would agree, it's not a shining treasure because there are these moments. There's a MacGuffin. There's almost
multiple
like the false advertising of the like in the Multiverse of Madness. You know, we really only travel to like 3, and I think I was almost hoping we would explore more or have like a chase scene or something.
It would also like feel less messy if there was like 1 character arc per character and not 3 per character.
Exactly. But having said all that, this is quite an ambitious movie. So definitely a Hot Soup, which I can tell you it's very cold right now, so I could go with some right now.
Yeah, I think on that note, shall we?
We shall. So, you know, thanks for taking a break with Clean Slate. Oh, Rob's gone.